Neil Bronstein. I'm sitting in for Christina Sorrento, who is out today. And this is DRC for 4910, 4920 Strathmore, Mid-County Planning, who are all here with us. So if you guys are ready, take it away.
Okay, thank you guys for.
Well, Ian, I'll jump in, Ian. I'll just introduce. We've got, a full VICA team on the phone. I know Wyndham, my colleague, is here. I'm Jack Lester with EYA, Luis Gonzalez with EYA, and I know you all know Aaron. And I guess before we jump in, I want to we've been involved in this together for at least 2 years, and I really appreciate all that we've accomplished with your hard work of your recommendation and going to the planning board and then going to the council. It's been a long road, and we're really appreciative for where you've kind of helped guide us to. So we think we're starting at a great place, notwithstanding the hundreds and hundreds of comments. But we appreciate that, and I know everyone has to really intensely focus. And I think we'll probably manage a lot of the comments, not in this 30 minutes, but kind of in one-on-ones and specialty, kind of specialized, if that makes sense. I do this maybe once every 3 years. I think I was last year for Cabin John, which is done, by the way. We'll settle our last home there in August, and so thanks for all your guidance on that. We think it's turned out great. So with that, Aaron, do we want to kind of jump into some of the bigger ones that we saw, bigger comments?
Yeah,
and
so we kind of selected some that we thought were best to just put to bed or needed more input from various agencies. So do you want to go through those?
Well, I'll at least call them out, and we can talk about, and somebody that knows more than I do can speak to it. But the one was when I looked at these over the weekend, we had kind of an all-hands meeting yesterday to try and absorb them. I was focused on the ones that are kind of existential, like, wow, we're this, if we can't reach a middle ground, we don't have, the project we envisioned. So one of those ones that jumped out was this issue of right-of-way on Strathmore. And my layman's understanding is that it's 80 feet, and we've provided the 40 feet from the center line to our property. And maybe, Luis, if there's more to say about that. We can't provide the 80 feet kind of on our side of the property.
So we're staying true to the center line just so that the alignment of the road can just flow correctly. So the 40 feet that we were looking at was from the center line onto our property site. And then we also have Ian with VICA who was able to do some further research on the matter.
Yeah, that's correct. We looked at a few different plats. Most notably, you had mentioned plat 9347, which is on the screen. We are 40 feet currently with the land that was dedicated with this plat. We're 40 feet from the center line. The right-of-way is recommended for 80. There's a good bit of land, obviously, that you can see all the way out to the north side of Strathmore for the right-of-way. And this other plat here, 20824, is very similar in nature, that shows with the dedication for this other portion of the property that we are subdividing into. Even with that dimension, we are still above the 80 feet that's required for that right of way. So we felt there would be no need for additional dedication on our frontage.
And I think this was a DOT comment, so I don't know who's on from there, but
this is Rebecca. That's the minimum width of the right of way. We need to make sure that we can fit everything into the right of way. Strathmore Avenue is the SHA, but you need to show us that you can fit everything within what's called for in the master plan in that right of way. And if not, then you'll have to give, I don't think the state takes easements. So, and I don't know if it was a DOT comment, but DOT, it's just an advisory, and planning and SHA will have to work with you on that.
Rebecca,
Okay.
this is Matt. I appreciate the comment. I just want to make sure I understand because it was a DOT comment. So if it's a matter of just providing a section that's clearly dimensioned, showing all the master plan facilities and lane widths and everything, would that sufficiently address the DOT comment?
Yeah, I don't know why, to be honest, I think it's just an advisory. But you do need to show that you can fit within the master plan. I think planning wanted to see that as well.
Yeah, and I think perhaps in the response to comments, if the team could just point us towards that section, which probably already exists in the application package, that'd be helpful.
Sure thing, Matt. Thank you.
And one thing that would be also good, Ian, and you've done this in other projects, is to show the interim and the final. So because you're only dedicating on your side, you're not going to be able to show improvements for the whole street, but you need to show your side in a way that sets up the final section to be accomplished within the 80 feet.
Okay. Understand it, Tool. Thank you. Related to that, to some degree, along this frontage, there was also a comment about making sure that we provided the connection along the front side in front of the school. And the right-of-way doesn't technically exist for that improvement to occur. We have engaged with that landowner in order to try to provide that. And I don't know if Jack wants to speak a little bit more to that effect.
Yeah, so thanks. Ian, I wanted to go there next while you've got your picture up. So we've had probably half a dozen meetings and conversations with the priest, his advisory board. We've worked through, we probably shared some of the solutions. And we appreciate, I think the recommendation or the requirement was we didn't want kind of the footpath that they were willing to accept and we were willing to build. We wanted something more substantial, which makes sense. They're stuck on, well, I think their position is somebody needs to come and buy our right of way. We want the sidewalk, buy our right of way and build us a sidewalk. We are, of course, comfortable, and I think we've recommended it in our improvements plan to build the sidewalk, but we're stuck in this place where church, while they want the sidewalk, doesn't want to give the right of way. I believe that technically there is a bit of right of way there, but it wouldn't. You would have to have a jog in the path, and you wouldn't be able to do it in the 10-foot shared path dimension, which would be suboptimal. We of course would do that. But again, that would be a compromise that you'd have to accept. So I'm not sure what the answer is here when you've got an owner that says, I want it, but I'm not giving it to you.
Could you describe, Jack, the compromise a little bit more?
Well, I think where we initially started with the church was there is a footpath, just worn grass, and we said we can make that more permanent and weave it between the mature trees there so it doesn't impact the roots. And I think they were initially fine with that. And I think if I remember right, that was suboptimal, obviously for staff, right? Like we want the 10-foot running through. So the compromise was something, that I think at one point they were willing to accept, but it was clearly not, the best solution.
And I think, as you can imagine, different people there have different opinions. So I think some people are fine with it. Other people are like, no way. So we're just trying to navigate what to do because we were happy to provide it. If the right of way was there, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but I'm not sure what's required under, what documentation you need. Do they have to, how do you determine when it's really infeasible? What do we need to show that it's infeasible?
And one data point is the person that is the advisor for the church. He's on the church board, and he really speaks much more loudly than the priest does. His father helped build the church. He's like, we've been having these discussions with SHA for 8 decades. So he's fixated that the state is going to do this. They promised it, but I guess it never gets funded. So he's set in a place where I'm getting my cake and eating it too from SHA. So
it sounds like, let me just make sure I understand. If if you don't have the right of way, if you're not able to purchase the right of way, so you would have a sidewalk, you would still have a connection.
Well,
That's what I'm trying to understand.
yeah,
We
I'm
could do
sorry.
some kind of connection in the right of way that exists there now,
Okay, would it be,
but it would not be, I don't know.
What I'm
Ian or somebody would have to
imagining,
jump in.
Yeah, what I'm imagining is, right, we've got the 10-foot path coming along, going across our property, and then their right of way next down, so you would probably have a jog and a narrower path,
Okay.
right? That's,
okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this could be
Right.
like a follow-up meeting with SHA
Yeah.
and MCDOT and staff and the applicant to work through it. I think we all are on the same page that we need to have a facility. I think it's just a matter of what that is.
Yeah, what it looks like and
Okay.
and everything. And so Elwin has been coordinating with SHA and DOT on a little bit of this issue, so maybe we could work through him to set up a follow-up meeting.
perfect.
Okay.
And I promise not to give the church your name and number.
And I think, if we had something to chew on ahead of that meeting, it would probably be more productive.
So Ian, let's create, I guess, the suboptimal condition, right? Where we've got the proper path across our frontage, and then you do whatever we have to fit it into the existing right of way and see if that's something that folks could get comfortable with.
One thing, Ian, and when you guys do that, I think having the sidewalk or the connection is important, but we also don't want to create an unsafe connection. So,
That's what we need to talk about.
we don't
Yeah.
want a curb running 5-foot little thing that is actually going to create more hazard than good, especially along a state road. So when Ian, you are looking at that dimension, I know things are already tight. It sounds like,
Yes.
try to balance things out to
Right.
have a buffer and a facility versus just an unsafe facility or just a buffer that's so big that there's no facility left.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Got
that's
it.
the issue, right? Ian's gonna show you a 5-foot or 6-foot path, but it's right up against the curb, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I think if you were to take that 10-foot path from the west and just project it along just to show
What you'd need.
how much right away would we need? What are we looking at as far as grading? I know there's a swale in that area and there are ball fields. So, what would it take to get that path in a uniform fashion all the way across, as well as what can we accomplish given the right of way and the situation as it exists now? That'd be helpful.
Okay, Ian, we can do that, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So Matt, when we met with
Um,
SHA's project was only a sidewalk. And nobody contemplated that there was actually a bicycle master plan requirement there. So they had shown stormwater management and just sidewalk. So what their facilities were showing were insufficient to meet the master plan. And I think Ellen and I had talked to them about that as well.
Right. Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
I'm not sure if I shared the feasibility study that they did back in 2010, I believe, but that's something we can share with you guys.
I think we've
saw
got that.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think subsequently, they did put in some stormwater facilities, which kind of actually complicate the whole thing because they're right where you'd want the 10-foot path, of course.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah, Wyndham.
Hey, Jack, it's Wyndham. So sorry I'm not there in person, but just one thing to point out is the plan originally that SHA came up with to show that a sidewalk was feasible along there. The church has seen that. And so that's what they're fixated on. And that's part of what the problem is that we're dealing with, is because they have said, SHA says it can be done. And Rebecca, I agree with what you're saying, but SHA didn't take that into consideration when they showed the church a plan that would work and allow a sidewalk along Strathmore. So frankly, they're fixated on a connection can be made, and they don't really care whether it's 10 feet. So just FYI, that's part of the issue that we're having with them.
Well, it sounds like
Thank you.
SHA definitely in the conversation as we work through this.
Perfect. We'll get you that exhibit to see what we can do and what we don't. Okay, the next one, Luis, Wyndham, Ian, maybe you can talk about the complete streets comment relating to sidewalk width and street buffers.
Sure. I wanted to make sure I wasn't on mute. One of the things that we had done was obviously work through the floating zone plan with staff for quite some time, and realized road sections, realized geometry, avoided the stream valley buffer as much as possible with that bend in the road. We did a lot of shifting and minutia over the design of this plan. And I think at this stage, I understand that Complete Streets is supposed to provide for public and private roadways, but I think we really need to look at the approved floating zone plan and adhere to what we assumed would be pretty locked down as far as geometry and dimensions.
Yeah, maybe just to emphasize a point, we felt like we did a lot of work with sections and really got into the details. This, of course, were we to change those sections, would have a pretty substantial impact on the plan. So we'd like to work with you to make sure that we, of course, as you know, are really focused on walkability and what it feels like as you're walking through our community. So it's something that we put a heavy focus on. I think collectively we did. We'd like not to kind of make major changes to.
Yeah, and I want to respond to that because we had a lot of conversations about the streetscape, and I feel like a number of our comments were never really satisfactorily addressed as to how it relates to that street design. And so, we went through the zoning capacity exercise. We made comments at that time. I really don't think substantive changes were made per our comments, which are now, I think, consistently being brought up again. So I'm not sure where that leaves us.
But didn't we, I remember the sidewalk width. I feel like at least the sidewalk width, we'd agreed to.
The sidewalk width,
I'm
right?
pretty sure I have that somewhere.
And we talked about trees along the sidewalk and,
right.
The length of the driveway and everything so that a parked car wouldn't be blocking the sidewalk. And so I feel like there were a number of things that we just never really got resolution to, but I know that we had the conversation.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There were some things that we all agreed, and I think it was even in the conditions we're going to lock down now. But I think particularly the sidewalks, we were like, wow, we spent a lot of time talking about sidewalk widths and shifting that.
Were you going to say something?
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to piggyback off of that comment, particularly with Street C, that it also ties in with a lot of our environmental comments and concerns. So we would still, I don't know if that's on your list, but pardon from jumping ahead, but I think the issue with the sidewalk width is also want to tie into our comments about the townhouses that are still shown in the Stream Valley buffer. We would like you to pull some of those units out if you, if you can. We also need appropriate justification for why they're encroaching into the buffer. There are a number of things that are missing on the FCP. We can definitely go into that in a separate meeting, but I think it all ties together with the widths and so on.
I guess, my recollection was on the street, in sidewalk and street, we were set. I absolutely agree. The one that's been on my front lobe for, a year now is the driveways.
Yeah.
Right. And so that one, absolutely. I'm not, but kind of the other, the sidewalks, the planting strip, the street, to the extent we have it, the on-street parking, I felt like that was baked. And I guess let's go to the driveways. Go ahead.
Can we stay on the Stream Valley buffer just for 1 second? I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware. We do not have units in the Stream Valley buffer. We made clear changes to our layout to make sure that the units themselves, it's difficult to tell with this composite plan because the line weights are so heavy, but we stayed very clear, not very clear, but we did not encroach into the Stream Valley buffer with units at all. What we did was push up to that limit, and then we do have some elements for the decks or patios that may be within that Stream Valley buffer. And as part of that, I know Josh Sloan had discussed with Steve Finley our ability to increase other areas as an offset for those smaller impacts that are on the west side. So it's not units per se, it's just some elements.
And we did think we had complete agreement on that trade-off.
So yeah, unfortunately, Steve is not here, but I know it was definitely a concern of his. It's still in his comments. The lots, the boundary of the lots are shown within the Stream Valley buffer. The first priority is, could we adjust the lots out of the buffer? And if they cannot be adjusted, appropriate justification needs to be provided, and all the information associated with a buffer averaging needs to be provided, which is missing from the application. So we do understand that there's some wording and flexibility in Chapter 19 that talks about, encroachments into the buffer, but we're looking at it from the perspective of Chapter 22A, also our environmental guidelines. So, those elements haven't been addressed with this first submission. So
That's fair. And we'll get the justification. I know we have sent that. I can picture the exhibit in my mind where we're kind of encroaching, but we're giving back more space. But clearly you've got to see that to confirm it. I guess jumping back to the driveways and parking, and I want to be mindful, I think we've got 9 minutes left. Is that right? Okay. So clearly, the length of the driveways, I want to just give you our perspective, right? So on the chart, and maybe we wanted to be completely transparent on the parking chart, and it shows that we're like grossly overparked. We view this as dangerously kind of underparked. And I say that from a developer that we're not really, car-centric developers. What you have here, what you see in red are each home has 2-car garage parking. So 100 and, I'm not going to do the math, but 100 and 13 homes times 2, right? So where
12, I think it is, Jack. I'm going to zoom in on the chart.
Okay.
There we go.
We broke it out by singles, and setting aside the Brandywine facility, right? That just meets its requirement for its residents and for its employees. So you're looking at the townhomes and the single family. So we've got 2-car parking for each home. Where we're concerned with this project, and I know where our neighbors are concerned and the academy's concerned, is the visitor parking. So this site has, if you go back to that exhibit and showing the on-street spaces, and I believe the number is 28. So that's shown in blue here. And of those 28, I don't know this math right here, the ones on what we call the shared road that's shared with the Academy and Brandywine is available to Academy students and families as well. So potentially we've got fewer than 28 visitor spaces for 113 homes. And some of those are, as you can see, kind of a long way away from some of the homes. So where we were proposing is that where you see in green, those front loads be designed to have an 18-foot, which I believe is the legal definition of a legal parking space. And I know we talked about this, and I absolutely agree it wasn't resolved, but we feel like that our design really enhances the green along there. Logically, right, by having that longer, deeper front yard, we can do more planting, we can do more significant planting, we can get a tree in that front yard. I think we shared an illustration of what it's like if it's 6 feet versus what it's like if it's 18 feet. And it's actually the driveway, the concrete piece is 16 feet, and we do a recess of the garage door 2 feet. So this is two things that are driving this. One is the real need for visitor parking. We just don't think having in the low 20s for the residents for a community of 113 homes is going to meet the demand, and that's going to now spread out to Symphony Park and the folks across the street. By allowing the 2-car legal space in the front loads, that gives us another 50-something visitor spaces. And you may know, we do require in our HOA that you not park in your driveway, that owners cannot park in their driveway, that it's only for visitors. And we would put time constraints on that like we do on the on-street spaces. So anyhow, I said a lot.
Yeah,
Right.
Jackie,
No, I think that's, if I could just finish for 1 second, the green spaces, I want to make sure everybody understands too, somebody who's visiting the neighborhood can't just park wherever in any of those green spaces. Those green spaces are visitors of that particular unit.
Yeah. I think we understand what the proposal is here, and there's still, I think, disagreement on this, right? So where we are coming from is that we cannot support 4 parking spaces per townhouse in a transit adjacent location like this. Also, when we showed this in sections that Natasha did previously during the rezoning that showed how you could by shrinking that depth of the driveways so that you only have 2 spaces that are internal to the unit, you could actually have more on-street parking on the other side of the street. I think all these exhibits have been shown to you, and what that does is it creates a more regular sort of area for street trees. It creates space for that. You have a little bit, this is a Swiss watch, Jack. We're very aware of that. It gives you a couple of feet maybe to pull buildings closer to the street by having a narrow driveway. So I think we are still where we were, and we really need to kind of work with you to get there.
Yep.
I will say that this is not unique to your site. All the easy sites are already done, which is why EY is so good at doing this. And we are recently reviewing another site in Chevy Chase by north of your project, where we had the exact same conversation. And Ian, your colleague Josh, was very good at finding a way to shrink all of this and create more on-street parking on that project. So I think there are ways to solve the problem. We've already done a huge compromise here, Jack, by allowing front-loaded townhouses. You don't do that usually. You look at Chelsea Courts, you look at your Chevy Chase Crossing, they're all, nice EYA projects with very high density, but they're rear loaded. So I think we've already gone, because of the specific nature of the site, to that place. But we'll work with you, and
I appreciate it.
Where we can.
Yeah, and I think the backup tools comment, I believe we've been talking about this all along. It's not a new comment.
Nope.
And I think most of the things about the plan to me don't have red flags. This is a red flag.
Okay.
Because it really feels like you're entering a community that is majority pavement, and that is not consistent with what we're seeing with other developments like this in the county. So I think that's the streetscape, having a sidewalk, for instance, on Street B with no buffer, that's a real concern of ours. We understand sometimes sidewalks that are retrofitted have to have no buffer because there's nowhere to, but this is a brand new street, right? And so I think we really want to see that buffer as well. I think I know we're running out of time, and I think a full comment plus the buffer on Street B are sort of things that jump out at us as a higher priority issue.
Buffer on
Yeah,
Street
Street B, you have sidewalk right along the street, on the street parking.
Private street.
On private Street B on the north side.
Do you understand? Yeah. Okay. Well, you have been super consistent and super clear, and yep, we absolutely get it. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question on parking though? Because there was a blanket comment, we don't support the parking waiver. Brandywine is asking for 2 extra spaces above. So as we detailed, it's kind of wonky how it is in the code. Their minimum and maximum is the exact same. And they just feel that, as I detailed in the statement, it's needed for shift change and stuff. And it's consistent with what the board has been giving to other residential care facilities. It's actually way lower than others. So I just want to make sure when we say we don't, is that also an issue, or is it really just for the single family?
Yeah, I made that comment. That's more so the total amount of parking for the town. And
Okay.
Yeah.
But the Brandywine probably is okay for the 2.
Probably.
Okay.
And I know Paul and Natasha looked at the architecture and gave you guys some comments on the architecture, and that again can be a subsequent.
Yeah, we figured that would be a separate meeting.
We are here to resolve the issues in case you guys need another meeting later on. And
Yeah,
Great.
I know they want to talk about that.
I was just going to say, I think we touched on some of the key things that staff had. The only other item that was listed in LMA staff report was with the open spaces. We also made a couple of comments about that.
I think that's a separate meeting too.
Make it more usable. So keep that on your radar. And also, I just want to put in a plug for the community. As you know, the community is really active and concerned about this project. And we just ask that you continue to collaborate with us and with the community so we can address a lot of the questions and comments that came up that weren't really within the scope of the LMA. So now is the time. Right. So we just asked.
Yeah, we talked about that before too. Yeah, and okay. We're happy to, as we did with the LMA, put our consultants at your disposal to answer any questions that come up. And we've obviously been working with the community too. So we're happy to continue to do that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We'll be reaching out to you very shortly to set up some of these sidebar meetings so we can make sure that we're addressing all the concerns and comments.
Yeah, sure.
Sounded like someone had a.
Go ahead.
Yes, here is sorry to interrupt. I am Karen Carpio from WSSC. I think we will need to have a meeting with you guys too. I have critical comments about the encroachment of our easement and your design. If you want to meet up with us, let me know.
Yes, we agree, and we'll be reaching out to you shortly to set up that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Jack and
Very
Aaron.
quick.
Oh.
Just to say very quickly before we break, will the tasks be released today? A, and B, is our resubmission date tagged for August 3rd? Our first resubmission? Like schedule, we just wanted to kind of map that out.
Yes, so the first resubmit is, yes, August 3rd. And final is 8/23, and with the 120-day clock, 10/27 would be the planning board date.
Okay. And the tasks will be released today for both plans?
Yes.
Okay.
And it sounded like somebody else had a comment?
Yes, this is Maribel, and really quickly before we break, if we could just get Elwin's, and I don't know if Rebecca's still on the line. We had the comment on, or the question of the traffic signal not counting towards the proportionality guide. And I understand that we're still discussing other potential offsite improvements, such as the path to the east. But if we do land and where we're proposing the signal, I want to point out that the LATR guidelines do include language about vehicular mitigation counting towards the proportionality guide if it includes improvements, addresses deficiencies in the pedestrian transit system and such. So Owen or Rebecca, I don't know if either of you, I can't tell who specifically issued the comment. I think it came from DOT maybe.
Yeah, Ed made the comment as well. We want to view that as an offsite improvement, so that's the biggest thing that's being discussed. That's something we can talk about at a future meeting.
Okay.
Great. Thank you all.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is DRC for Batson Road property, administrative subdivision plan. This is Neil Bronstein. I'm sitting in for Christina Sorrento, who is out today. This is in Up County, and we have some Up County people here ready to go. And do we have the applicants on the line?
Yes, Dave McKee here, representing the applicant. Good morning.
Okay, good morning. Do you have everyone you need with you?
Yes, the applicant is traveling. He's not able to log in today, but I'll report back after the meeting.
Okay, then I think we're ready to start. Dave, you should have the comments that were sent to you. Did you want to start with any questions or responses to the comments that you received?
Sure, I've got a few questions, not very many. I did look over all the comments and appreciate everybody's time, and we'll respond to each one as appropriate when we get back into revising the plans. But there's a few questions. Start with the dedication for Batson Road. I see that there was a request maybe by DOT to provide another 5 feet for 35 feet from center. And I'm wondering where that came from. All of the record plats along Batson show 60 feet of right-of-way. And I didn't see anything in the master plan or elsewhere that might have suggested 35 feet or a 70-foot right-of-way. So I'm wondering about that.
Yes, this is Chris Van Alstyne. Well, that was actually, I think for me, maybe Billy can back me up on this, but typically our right-of-way dedication is 70 feet for, it's a rustic road, so that would be the typical standard. And Billy, go ahead. Yes, as Chris said, we for rustic road, we have 70 foot of right-of-way typically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if that's the way it is, that's fine. I did see also that there'd be no PUE along Batson. So I guess that kind of some give and take there. All right, we'll update the plan for that. The next comment would be related to the impervious cap. I see lots of comments about the imperviousness on the site. Certainly understand those. I also see that, I haven't talked to Doug previously, that we didn't calculate the impervious correctly, that it needs to be tied into the transition area. So the transition area in this case is going to be everything outside the stream buffer. The rest of the property is entirely within the transition area. So, and as I calculate it, contrary to the notes I have on the FCP, we would end up at about 9% of impervious as it's shown currently. So that would be under the 10% cap. So we'd be in compliance. And
hey, Dave, can I intrude for just a moment?
Yes, please.
This is Doug. The one question I have is the 9% indicative of a accurate layout of the house?
Mm-hmm. So the
or
house,
are you just showing up? Are you just showing a block house like you typically do on a preliminary plan and calculating the impervious off of that?
Well, we don't have a house plan today. And even if we did, that doesn't mean that it would be built. I mean, we don't know. Currently, the owner who owns the property intends to build a house for his family. But you never know what's going to happen in the future. It could be 5 years from now, he decides it's not the right thing for him and he sells the property. And we have somebody else who has a different idea about developing the site. But what I've shown on the plan is what the owner intends to do. Now, the house footprint is just conceptual. I mean, it's 4,000 square feet, so it's 50 by 80. It's certainly reasonable. I don't think it will be larger, but it might be different. Okay. I think it's a reasonable depiction. It's certainly not too small. And if it was, I mean, I certainly understand we have to comply with the 10%.
Right.
So getting into my question, there's ultimately going to be an impervious surface agreement which I see in your comments.
Correct.
Does that agreement mean that we're limited to 10%? Does it mean we're limited to 9%? Or what exactly are we end up being held to?
You're being held at 10%. The way the agreement is worded, it's something to the effect of, you will not, the imperviousness will not go above 10%.
Okay.
So you're held to that 10% cap, not like if perchance you show 7.5% on the plan, you're not held to 7.5%.
Got it. That's perfect. Okay, that sounds good. Then I guess just a couple of things about some of the comments about impervious. So I see a couple of comments about maybe the circle driveway should be reconsidered. We could do that on this plan, but again, if we're complying with the 10%, other than possibly saving, a tree or two that might have to be removed with that circle, I don't quite understand the impetus of asking for us to take that off the plan. Because we're trying to show what the owner intends to be, what he desires to do on the property. We're trying to be as realistic as possible.
And I understand, Dave, and that's not a problem. That particular comment in relation to the circle drive that's more of a
rustic road issue.
Why is it a rustic road issue?
Sorry, that's Chris Van Alstyne again. So it's on Batson Road, rustic road. I presume that's going to be visible from the rustic road, and it's really not in keeping with obviously the rustic appearance. As we mentioned, it's going to have to go to the Rustic Roads Advisory Committee. That's just a pretty standard comment, is to not have kind of superfluous pavement, things that don't preserve rustic characteristics, such as a circle driveway. So that's where that's coming from. It's not so much, I mean, I guess it is additional impervious pavement, which is not great, but it's more for a characteristic of the road.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to meet with the Rustic Roads Advisory Committee at the site next week, it looks like. So certainly collect their comments as well and get those back to you when we resubmit. Okay, I think I have a good handle on the impervious questions and comments there. The next thing would be related to the fire department plan. If Marie is here and available to talk about that, thank you. So the one comment that concerns me, I guess, a little bit is that you mentioned that the existing water supply out there, which are the hydrants nearby, don't have an adequate operational pad.
None of them are located along 20 feet of pavement.
Right. So what does that mean to us?
So what I would, the solution that I see at this point in time would be to create the operational pad at your driveway, which would be required anyway. We always do this even when you're in rural water supply areas. So your driveway would need improvement to create that 60-foot long operational pad at minimum 20 feet wide. But I would also be looking for you to co-locate a hydrant with that. So asking you to price out and locate a hydrant with your new driveway.
Okay, so we're looking at much more pavement there for the entrance than what we, I guess, currently show.
Well, what you're currently showing is wide.
Yeah.
I think it can be narrowed down to the moderate. Some for obviously Batson's not 20 feet wide, so it would not be a 30-foot wide apron. It might be a 40-foot wide apron, but I don't know that we're looking at the 70 plus you've got right now. I think there's somewhere in the middle that we can meet, but yes, we would be widening it onto the property to create the operational pad.
Yeah. And then a new hydrant in the right of way, I guess.
That would be between you and WSSC. WSSC, the spacing out here is so interesting that they may ask you to do a private hydrant. I don't know. That would be a discussion to keep me involved with, and I think we need to do a lot of that offline.
Right, okay.
Hey, Marie, this is Atul. I just have a question. Seems to me that this is a good case for looking at some of the performance-based alternatives that you and we all worked on. And one question I had was, since there is a driveway that is being provided to access the house, can the fire trucks not use the driveway itself as an operational area, given that this will be a single-family house and you know, the window sills and stuff are unlikely to be above 27 feet, which
Atul, if you listen to what I just said to Dave, that's exactly what I said. We're talking about making the driveway the operational pad.
Okay, that's great. I just, I'm walking new into this, so I appreciate the clarification. So what you're suggesting is not more pavement, you're actually saying less pavement, but making sure there's a 60-foot by 20-foot operational base shown, marked out on the driveway itself.
What I'm talking about is not widening Baston, of course. Whatever modification needs to happen to this driveway, it looks like it should narrow the apron, but perhaps widen it into the property. I don't know what the balance of pavement is going to be to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as long as there's a 20-foot wide space in the driveway that is 60 by 20, that can be used for as an operational bay, right?
That is the intent.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll work on that, and I'll get with Marie, get with you directly on that. We'll work that out. Those were my questions. Like I said, we're going to meet with the Rural Rustic Advisory Committee at the property next week. We don't have a date quite yet, but working that out. And then I'll come back with the updated plans. That's all I had today.
Alex, did you have any other issues that we needed to cover?
I think that we covered it.
We covered all of them.
Are you able to talk a little bit more about why this site is proposed with access off of Batson Road instead of Brogden Road?
Yeah, I am. The septic area is fixed. If you go back and look at some of the other plans, they're easier to read. The topography is really not suited for a septic field along Batson Road. So one of your comments was maybe to move the septic field over to the other side and switch them, but we're pretty fixed on where we have it. I mean, really, the septic area is on the best ground, unfortunately, but there's reasons for that, and that's where it perked also. And then the owner just has a desire to kind of relate to some of the newer homes along Batson versus, you know, the character along Brogden that, you know, he doesn't feel relate as well to what he has in mind for his property. So he felt pretty strongly that he wanted to use Batson for his access.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else on the line have any comments or things to go over on this application?
I was just going to ask Marie and David, if you have any follow-up discussions on fire access, could you please include Alex, our lead reviewer, so that we are also part of those discussions?
Yep, we'll do. Absolutely.
As you know, we're concerned about the impervious limits as well as the rustic character of Batson Road. So I think those are related to whatever we do for fire access. So appreciate if you can include us on those discussions.
Yeah, and one thing, this is cool again, I'll just add that, you know, what Marie is proposing here is actually going to help with sort of some of the conformance with the rustic grove character. If that driveway is 20 feet wide, that apron can be tightened up. And I would imagine that that would be a positive enhancement from the point of view of the Rustic Road Advisory Committee as well. I think there's a good solution here to pursue.
Sounds good. I'll have that discussion with them at the site and we'll keep everybody in the loop on that.
Here at WSSC, is they are requiring to you to do a fire hydrant. You will need to apply a different for a different plan that is called no DRP fire hydrant in WSSC. Only it's a go ahead. But yeah, any question, anything, please contact us, and with any question that we can help you.
Thank you. Will do.
Okay, anyone else have any comments? If not, then thank you for this one, and for people on the line, the next time will be at 10 minutes to 11. So we'll see you in a little bit. for Christina Sorrento. The third and final DRC item for this morning, deals with disorders in Mid-County planning. We have some Mid-County people here in the room with us, and we have Jody Klein, and the applicants are here in the room. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Michael Wilcox and Jennifer.
Jody Klein, attorney representing the owners. We have our civil engineer, Mike.
Yep.
Oh,
Yes,
Mike
I'm
was
here.
muted.
Yep, I'm here.
There you go.
And our architect, Greg Hundeman, is either calling in from either Austin or Florida. I'm not sure which location.
I'm at the Florida Leading Age Conference right now, but yeah, good to see everybody.
And Chris Hord is with a firm out of Pennsylvania that's interested in developing the property and has given us some of the ideas that we've shown on the plans. He'll speak if he wishes to do so. That having been said, we're ready to go if you are.
Okay.
Good morning. This is Amy Lindsay, and I apologize for not being in the room today. So I've put up the plan on the screen, and because this is a concept plan, of course, we're not going to get into the 50 million detailed comments, but so I want to just sort of start with kind of where we see the big tensions with this project. So the first tension is that you're located on a rustic road. So that begins to speak to the expected character of the road and the need to go to the Rustic Roads Committee. And unfortunately, all dedication for this road has to come from this side of the road because the west side of the road is all state park. So it's not that the road would necessarily be widened except potentially to provide for fire access, though we'll leave that to Marie to address. But so the full dedication would have to come from the east side of the road. And there would be the desire to maintain the rustic character, not just the desire, it would be the requirement. And then on the east side of the property, you're backing up to an existing residential development. So because an assisted living memory care facility in this zone would require a conditional use, right? But the main issue here has to do with compatibility. And so you've got a three-story building sort of backing up to an existing community, and that the problem of the building mass is compounded by the fact that your property in some ways kind of sits on a knoll. It's definitely elevated from both the road and from the community to the east. So it is not clear to us that it's not the use that is the issue. It is how the use interacts with the surrounding existing development and having, this could end up sort of definitely towering over the adjoining properties. So those are kind of our major concerns at this point from a concept plan.
Well, and the comments we got from staff basically made that all very clear. And I was going to say that that's one of the great advantages of the concept plan application. It gives us an early preliminary reading of the issues that are bothering you folks and tells us kind of what we need to do. Did you want to add anything else, Amy, or should I jump in?
Feel free to jump in. I mean, I think in this case, as with many, the devil is in the details. And so, maybe there'd be a way to rearrange the building, to step things back. I'm just, we just wanted to make certain that you heard from us what the major issues were.
Well, I explained to the team, particularly the people who aren't here, that this is not we're not going to have a forum in here and debate all this today. But Greg, we talked yesterday and then you heard some more today. Maybe just some preliminary comments about how you're looking forward to getting into the dialogue with staff about how to address these issues.
Exactly. So, we want this to be a home for the residents. So, our intention is for this to feel like a grand house, right? So we don't want it to be anyway multifamily. The scale of the building, the size is significantly smaller. Having more of an L configuration, we don't have a really long front, so the scale of it's going to feel really nice relative to some other similar buildings, and it's really not a very big assisted living memory care building. So the scale of it is already at an advantage for what you're kind of wanting to do from that standpoint. We actually are cutting down the side a bit, so there's actually retaining walls at the back portion, so it's not going to be quite as high as existing grades. They were actually reducing it a little bit to try to balance the kind of how we're kind of adjusting the site itself. So I think that'll help a bit. And then we're dedicated to working with everybody to figure out a way to create an aesthetic that is complementary. It's a pretty there's lots of different aesthetics through there. So there's not really one strong aesthetic that we can just follow through with. You have the church and then, some smaller structures, some larger structures, and then the neighborhood behind. So, but the interesting thing is it does have this great amenity across the street too. So, and it has a good feel. It's a little atypical, and we do want to maintain the rustic nature of the road. I think that is an upside for the uniqueness of the character of the building. So our goal is to find a good aesthetic that does work well in that environment. It does feel good for the residents, and it's something that we can work with, the different folks that are associated with the project to figure out something that is compatible and then does work well, and then can also maintain the, what we need as well within the building to serve the residents well.
So when we read the DRC comments particularly on the design issues, we thought, okay, who do we get together with and when can we get together to start that dialogue? And I'm assuming that you two, Carrie and Matt, would be helping it set up, but I see we got two architects in the back too. So who's the design team we should be talking to?
Yeah, I think at this point, if you could coordinate through me.
Okay, sure.
Make sure that the right people are in the room, but we appreciate the opportunity to have more dialogue on it as you respond to comments and consider putting forth a formal application. And I want to echo, I really do appreciate that you went through the concept plan process, just because this is a good opportunity for us to identify some issues, just so that you're not going in with some lingering questions. So we're happy to continue the dialogue.
Great.
Thank you. You normally want us to ask you any questions we haven't. Frankly, the only question I've got is, I've been doing this long enough. I have heard the issue before. When you've got a public agency that owns land on the other side, you've got to give us all the right of way because we're not going to be able to get it from them. But in a context where we're not going to widen the road, it's sort of like somebody saying, we'd like to have our cake and eat it too. We're not going to give you any land, but we want you to give it, but we're not going to do anything with it. So who can I have a more detailed discussion with? I mean, can I go to DNR and say, hey, we'll plat it for you if that's all it needs to be done? Because the additional right-of-way that we're going to have to give you really starts tightening that site up a lot. You want to get the parking away from the road. You want to get the building as far back as possible. I'm not aware that there's a published policy that says we have to dedicate everything, though I've heard before. But I'd like to have pursue the dialogue to see if there aren't some solutions or alternatives to that. So who do I talk to do that? Is that a parks issue? Is it a right-of-way issue?
I haven't heard the approach of going to DNR before. I think we wouldn't be opposed to that if they were amenable to it. I think it really comes down to the designing the cross section and demonstrating that you've got adequate space to get fire access and whatever pedestrian facilities that we need to see. And so, you know, we've done modified right of way in certain cases, but it needs to be demonstrated that it's in the public interest and that everything is accommodated.
Mike, or the civil engineers, all the right of way, you're coming up and then you're going to have to make this jog. It just doesn't make sense to do that. And I realize the principle is, hey, we'll get it eventually from everybody else, but that's not an area where there's going to be a lot of redevelopment that's going to be dedicating that much land area. So I'd like to see if we can come up with some alternatives.
Yeah, at that point, I don't know if Marie is still on the line. Do you know? Marie, are you here with us?
I'm here.
Yeah, I know you had made some comments about that. Do you have anything to add?
She certainly gets the award for having the most comments, that's for sure.
You get what you pay for, right?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, thanks, Marie. But the good news is our architect picked it up right away, talking about the heights of the building and how to get service, so they understand where you're coming from.
You're gonna forgive me. What specific issue are you looking for a comment on at this moment in time?
Yeah, we were just talking about the right-of-way dedication, and I know that was tied to the fire department access comments, at least to some degree.
See, I'm not. Maybe it's because we didn't talk enough at the interagency meeting. I'm not sure how dedication. I mean, if you're going to widen it to get those distances, does that need to be dedicated? I'm not familiar with any of that. I just need to review that what you physically install will work for emergency response. So maybe you guys work the dedication out and then come to me, or vice versa. Let's get the fire department access laid out and then see how dedication needs to fall from there. This is not my area of expertise, gentlemen.
Yeah, Marie, let me kind of give you, I guess, an example. I've certainly worked with rustic roads folks before, where they've had us relocate a driveway entrance to where it probably would not normally have been, simply to save a tree or save some geographical feature that adds to the character of the road. There aren't that many trees out there, so I'm not so sure removal of trees along the roads right away. But the size of the driveway probably does have an effect from rural rustic. So you'd like us to have a driveway how wide? 25 feet? 20? I guess I just saw a vehicle C1. Okay, so you can live with 20 feet then. Okay.
The apron is what becomes the question, because the aprons for a 20-foot wide driveway have to be at least 35 feet wide, depending on how wide the pavement is out on the rustic road. That apron may get wider or get smaller, depending on what's coming in.
Yeah. Okay.
So Game Preserve, does anybody know what the pavement width is on Game Preserve Road? That was not provided on your access plan.
Probably. Mike, do you have any idea? It's probably minimum out there at best.
I don't know exactly right now. I'll check into that, but I don't think it'll be a problem providing 20 feet for fire access.
That's great, but again, we're looking at the apron.
Correct.
So the size of that apron is completely dependent on your pavement width, not just your driveway. Your driveway, of course, has to be 20 feet wide, but how wide is Game Preserve Road? If it is less than 20 feet, that apron gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Sure.
Yeah, we can balance. I think we can balance on the site plan update so that we do work with your turning radiuses and do it in a way that, maybe we go 25 foot just to help with that, to give you more maneuvering clearances, if that's okay with the rustic folks.
An option.
And then, so I think we can play back and forth and get something that I think will be successful for you guys.
Yeah, I understand. I've been in. Matter of fact, when I saw this playing as, I could see rural rustic saying, we're not wild about any development out there. If it's going to occur, we'd rather have it be residential rather than commercial, because the commercial is going to require a larger driveway, and then that'll be minimum. So I could see them saying, we can live with a house out there. We're not sure we can live with a structure like this, but that'll be, we'll have to convince them of that.
Well, if it helps at all, your fire department access is going to be the same for residential as it is for commercial. Trucks have to get into the house.
Right.
commercial.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Stan, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say exactly what Marie said. FTX is going to be the same. And when you do the turning radii, you'll have to balance the rustic road's desire to maintain that character and the fire department's access ability to come into the road. That's where I think some turning studies and the spreadsheet that Marie has that calculates that radius, et cetera, will come in handy.
Okay. Michael, is there anything you can think of, addition you wanted to ask us?
Not at this time.
I think that I'll give a couple comments.
Oh, please do. Yeah, great.
You mentioned something about, as deep of a setback as possible from the road. I'm not sure if that is a major concern as much as breaking it down. So that if, for instance, I think that one elevation that faces the road has two sort of notches on it. Perhaps those notches get deeper going towards the road so that when you're going down the rustic road, it looks like you're seeing two narrow buildings rather than one big, long, wide building. That helps to break down the scale. Okay. I think that the back bay that faces right to the houses, you might want to maybe push that bay back like a full length, right? So that the back bay sort of is a small T. Basically get rid of that bay so that you have a deeper width in the houses, and it might, if you have the drawing, you can see pretty clearly.
Yeah, can somebody pull up the site plan on the screen?
The good thing is not having a long facade against the back is going to make it a lot easier to play with, which is really nice in the way that we have that set up there. And then we can faux some step backs. We can also work with some materials too that'll help with the step backs that we play with, the way that we overlap the materials vertically as well as horizontally. And then that can actually even accentuate some of the setbacks as well.
Yep. I think all of that needs to come into play. And the more you do to break down the scale, I think that's the biggest problem you have. Even though you're only 3 stories, which is good, I think there's still going to be a lot of concern out there.
Yeah.
Just with that mass, especially on a rustic road.
And
exactly.
We would recommend that you really consider the architectural character carefully.
Of the area?
Of the area.
It's pretty well, it's a wide.
It's a wide gamut.
It's everything, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, so picking the style, if you have a broader palette, picking the style that allows you to, let's say, use roof forms for the 3rd floor and try to make the building appear like a 2-story thing where the 3rd floor is tucked into a
2-floor. Yeah, the 3rd floor could be dormers, for instance.
Things like that will help a lot. And using, maybe a more traditional vocabulary versus very contemporary vocabulary might help you with some of the compatibility concerns that the neighbors might have, and also make the building feel a little bit more residential versus commercial. So as you flush all these things out, I think that the style of the building will have a lot of things to offer you as a design tool to make the building look small, feel smaller. Than it really, and if there is grade, using that grade to maybe do a part of the building as a walkout condition so that you're not really seeing all 3 floors from the road or the backside might,
I played with that. There wasn't quite enough fall. That was my initial goal, was to do that. And unfortunately, there just wasn't quite enough fall to pull it off. It actually meant I had to raise it, and it got really funky, unfortunately, from that setting. But yeah, we definitely want to look at that. We also talked about increasing, all of the plantings and stuff for a buffer at the back as well, to try to go through some different options from that standpoint. So I think there's lots of different tools that we have that can, maximize the visual appeal to the adjacent residences.
Yep. I mean, what I was suggesting is that those things potentially could come up to gain some mass, because I think you need to get rid of that.
Okay.
So that you have a deeper setback. You could even put parking back there. If you needed more, pushes and pulls to get a little bit more dense, to get it back to where you are now. By removing that, you could potentially have some parking back there with trees and so on. So
Right.
there's a lot of different things. And then in passing, what we talked about, the third floor maybe being a roof type of, so more of a 2.5 story looking building rather than a 3-story building. All of those, I think, and then materials and colors, style, all that helps, I think, to break down in a way that might be more compatible and less of a problem with your neighbors.
Yeah. Well, do you have a sense of when we could start the dialogue?
Yeah, definitely. If you wouldn't mind, maybe we can schedule offline following this meeting, just to make sure that we can tap the.
But are we looking into September? Do you think we can get started in August sometime?
I think we can get started in August.
Good.
Yeah, a couple weeks from now.
Okay, all right. Mr. Horde, was there anything you wanted to say about this?
No, we just appreciate everybody's time. We have a great design team here, very seasoned, to deliver, as Greg mentioned earlier, not only for the community, but to the residents that, excuse me, to the residents that we're seeking to serve. And we always want to make sure that that commingles with the communities we build within. So we appreciate everybody's feedback.
So the one additional thing that I wanted to mention that you might be able to start working on now is, if you notice at the south corner, you have a bit of property line that you share with the Catholic Church. And because there is no sidewalk along Game Preserve Road, and there isn't likely to be one, it might be a real benefit to look at some form of connection through the Catholic Church property, because there are bus stops on Clopper Road, and that would then open up a new avenue for staff and visitors to be able to, use the bus and walk through the properties to get to this development. So perhaps, maybe starting a conversation with the church to see if that would be acceptable.
That's a good point, because Chris, probably a decent number of your staff do arrive by public transportation.
They will, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good idea, Amy. Unless anybody has anything else to say. Well, what always happens is we go out in the hall and the door closes and the client says to me, "How do we do?" And my answer is going to be, there were a lot of people nodding heads saying, "Hey, that's a good idea. There's something we can talk about." So I'm going to tell them it was an upbeat meeting, and there's people apparently ready here to help us kind of get through the process.
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great. Hey, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.